What's going on, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We are surrounded by firearms and we can't touch them during live, so we're not touching them. But we are going to talk about 10 reasons why you need a 22 long rifle firearm for survival, for your emergency preps. And we're going to go through some of the reasons. A lot of these are common reasons. One of the funny things is a lot of times 22 long rifle is touted as your survival rifle. There's a number of different companies that make them and they say, this is the survival rifle. It's a 22. But let's talk about how practical that is. We're going to talk about just a few things, but really 22 has a definite place in your survival preps. And we're going to look at some of the reasons why. There are some great ones. First off, though, I want to give a big thanks to Sarah Mack. She will be over on the computer monitoring the comments. And if you have any questions, just leave them and we'll take a couple of breaks and you can ask the questions. Don't necessarily have to do or pertain to what we're talking about, anything survival related. But obviously, if you want to ask questions about 22, that's even a better option. Also, we really give a big thanks to Exotac. Exotac makes some of the best fire starters on the market. I typically have a couple, but we were a little bit behind today. And they give a 20% discount using Suits20. You need to have a fire kit, not just a Bic lighter. You need a fire kit, something with multiple ways to create fire. Keep it in one small kit. It's just, and some tinder. It boils your water, cooks your food, gives you heat, gives you light, and it keeps predators at bay. Have a fire kit, an adequate fire kit. And Exotac makes some of the best fire tools on the market. And again, you get 20% off, and we appreciate Exotac. Also, head over to suitsgear.com. We have a lot going on over there, so run over to suitsgear.com. We have a giveaway going on right now. We're giving away the bug out bag that we made from Academy Sport. It's around $500, a little less, I believe, but we're going to be giving that away for the month of March. So jump over there and get set up. And plus, there's a lot of other cool stuff over there. So let's get into the subject. 22. 22, a lot of times 22 is almost like people look at it as maybe a toy. It's small bullet, low report. It's just 22. And 22 is really the most popular caliber in the world. In fact, one of the reasons why CIA operators carried 22 was because they could find the ammunition about anywhere. And so that's just one of the big reasons. And really, one of the reasons it's not necessarily on my list, even though 22 is very plentiful. And so it just gives you some really cool options. Back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, the IDF used 1022s with suppressors as non-lethal crowd control until I think the UN stepped in and said that's going to be illegal. They would shoot them in the legs. But, the thing about 22 is there are more people that are killed with 22, according to statistics, because it's so plentiful. And we'll get into some of the things about using that as a self-defense round. It is a last resort, but it is capable. And so it's just one of the advantages of 22. So having a good 22 rifle for a myriad of reasons. A lot of people carry them, like when they're going hiking or camping, they'll stick one of the small 22s, the little survival rifles or something, just to have that option. And then in a survival situation, we're going to look at 10 reasons why you should really look into it. First off is ammo. Ammo is fairly inexpensive. And when I say fairly, it is probably the cheapest ammo per round that you can buy. And it's plentiful. I mean, when you go to any kind of gun store, they typically, unless they're just out or unless it's during some kind of craziness, you have 22 options. One thing that we used to do years ago when they had the first assault weapons ban is we would go up to the Walmart. It was just in our town up in Brevard, North Carolina. And we would walk in there, and while 9mm was gone, while a lot of other ammunition was gone, 22 a lot of times was on the shelf. Now that changed a few years later, but 22 is on the shelf, I would buy a box of Federal bulk ammo, just bulk ammo. And I would buy a box every week. And it was cheap. It was like $9. I mean, it was like a 500 round little carton. And it just was great to have. And I just would stock them back. In fact, though, a few years ago, they did have, we have a huge shortage of 22. And man, you couldn't find it anywhere. So one of the things about it being plentiful is that you need to really stock up on some, and it's cheap to do. 22, is just so simple and it's fairly lightweight, so that makes it really easy. You take 100 rounds. This is a 100-round box of just 22s. You put that with 2 boxes of 9mm, which is 50 rounds apiece, and this weighs about a fourth of the weight. And so it makes it easy to be able to carry a considerable amount. And so having that lightweight option with your ammunition gives you a lot of capability and a lot of extra rounds. So 22, again, you can go into any store, you can find it. One thing that you'll want to be careful of is, like with 22 mini mags, these are great. They function in almost anything. And this is one of my favorites. In fact, Fiocchi makes a brand, their high velocity ammunition looks just like it and functions just like it. And I think it's a little cheaper. But having some 22 that functions your rifle, now, especially if you have a semi-automatic, sometimes they can be a little finicky. So one of the things about a bolt action, we have a little Springfield Armory bolt action right here, and it's very versatile. Problem is, it's a little bit slower. So having a bolt action gives you more options, but again, it's a little slower, but you can use your standard 22 or Ruger 1022 mags in this little bolt action. So it gives you a number of options that way. But one of the things about 22 short, it's very low report, but it's not going to function in your semi-automatic rifle. But in a bolt action, you can actually use 22 short, 22 long. And so ammunition, super cheap, super reliable, and you can really stock up on it. And so really that is the number one thing about 22 ammunition. Now, on the number 2 is that it is fairly quiet. Now, with subsonic ammunition, you're definitely going to have a report, and you need to be wearing ear protection when you shoot 22. So be careful. Also, with 22, don't dry fire the gun, and that means don't pull the trigger on an empty chamber. One of the things about a rim fire is that with the case, the detonation or the gunpowder is set, or the primer explosive is around the rim. So the firing pin is offset, and it can cause some issues. It can get pinged, it can get messed up. And so traditionally, dry firing 22 is a big no-no. There are some guns that have come out in 22 where they say these are safe to dry fire. But typically, either you have a snap cap, or you can even use the little anchors that you put in your wall and slip that in the chamber, and it'll hit that rim and it won't hit the chamber, the side of the chamber. So don't dry fire your 22s. But it's low report. But the biggest thing about 22, and one of my favorites, is that if you have a suppressor, they are extremely quiet. So you've already got a soft, low report 22 round, take a suppressor and put on there, and it becomes really just incredibly Hollywood quiet. This is one of the Silencer Centrals. It's the Banish 22. I love this suppressor. I've got a lot of suppressors, but this is honestly the one I enjoy taking out and shooting the most. And the great thing about suppressors, which 22 doesn't have much recoil anyway, but it also reduces the recoil. And really, this one does not have a lot of gas coming back. It is just a great suppressor. And in fact, Silencer Central sent this, and I shoot this more than any other. But having a good suppressor, and you can use full-size suppressors if you want. But for me, I like to have a dedicated suppressor. What I love about it, it's small, it's tiny, and it fits on the firearm, and it can be more compact. Now, again, unfortunately, I can't touch any of these guns. And so on live, you're not supposed to touch them, but I have them out front, so they're safe. But we did a video a while back on a little Tipman 22. It was their bug out AR-22. and I've got it sitting right up front, and it compacts down to go in a small case, and that's a great option. So, and then with it suppressed, man, you've got a very quiet, very capable option for whatever you're planning to do, with your 22, whatever you need to do. So quiet, low report, then you can suppress it using subsonics. You can really get this down to just less than a pellet gun. In fact, if anything, like on a little 1022 that I have sitting here, this is one of the carbon fibers. It is so light already. But when I put that on there, the loudest noise is the bolt coming back. And so that's a pretty sweet option. So if you haven't, though, guys, I'm telling you, suppressors right now, people are buying them. And it's really become extremely popular. And what I would recommend is trying out a little 22 suppressor. They're fairly inexpensive compared to a lot of the other suppressors. And they're coming back really quick. So check that out. And of course, Silencer Central is a great option. In fact, they'll even ship it straight to your door because they do everything right there, all the paperwork and everything. Number 3 is for hunting. Obviously, 22 has been used for hunting, rabbits and squirrel and a lot of other things. But it can be used for a little bit larger game, but you don't really want to get too high up. Honestly, poachers have been using 22 for years to take out white-tailed deer. The problem is, of course, it's really quiet, and that's the reason they do it. But then the deer get away, and it can really, then you just lose the meat. So, I would not recommend 22 long rifle. But in a survival, grid down, SHTF situation, 22 may be a great option. It's just shot placement is going to be very important. One of the things that's great about a 22 is that it's accurate. In fact, this little 1022 or this little Springfield Armory bolt action, extremely accurate firearms. And so you can really get that shot placement where you want it. So hunting, but also just as important, or can be, is pest control. One of the things that happens, especially when there's a lot of garbage that's not being picked up, you're going to have a lot of rodents coming around, and they carry diseases and they get into places, and you don't want them to get into your food source. So having a 22 can also, or just as a caveat, a good pellet rifle. If you have a good pellet rifle, and that's another option that I've talked about in the past, is that 22, and you can get 22 caliber. In fact, I have a number of 22 caliber pellet guns, and man, they have some really high velocities, however you want to get them, but that works and functions very well. And there are a lot of parallels to what we're going to talk about, but I really think that the 22 takes it a large step forward. And so you may say, well, I've got a pellet gun, I can do some of these things, and you can. But I just think that 22 will do it better. Your standard air rifle, great, have one. And I think you should have one because they are quiet as well. So again, a lot of parallels, but we're really going to be sticking on to the 22. But pest control is definitely something that you can remedy a lot of issues, whether it's carrying disease, whether it's just getting into your food source, whatever it is. And then, even squirrels, which squirrels provide hunting, but they're also pests. And a lot of times they can get up in your attic, they can get into places, they can tear up things, they can even get up in your car and chew the wires. I had a friend of mine that had a brand new truck, and he pulled up to his house. He didn't have 100 miles on that truck, and got it the next morning, went to start it, wouldn't start. Some squirrels had gotten up in there and had chewed up his wiring. It cost a lot of money. And so, sometimes squirrels can really be an issue. And Robbie Wheaton calls them tree rats. And I do want to say something about Robbie, just as a caveat. Robbie's been with me for years doing our Sensible Prepper Lives. He just recently had a big career change. He still has Wheaton Arms. So if you want to go over and check out Wheaton Arms, they do sell a lot of products over there, and they're continuing to do that. But Robbie's made a career change. He's on the road a little bit more. And so that's one of the things I think Sarah Mack had told me the other day, that a lot of people were asking about Robbie. And I love Robbie. I hate it. I'm glad for him. He's doing really well. But we might get him on here sometime if he's in town. But we'll just have to see how that goes, because he's a pretty busy guy. Always been a busy guy, but a great guy and a good friend. So Pest control, hunting, number 3. Number 4 is that typically they're lightweight. Now, if you get something like this little bolt action Springfield Armory, it gets up there a little bit more, but it's still considerably lighter than your 308 or your 6.5 Creedmoor or other bolt action rifles, because even though it's very well made, has a nice thick barrel, it's still less than some of your other rifles. Again, this 22 Ruger 1022 that is the carbon fiber wrap barrel makes this thing incredibly lightweight, and yet you still have that 22 reliability of your 1022. And it's just, 1022s have been around for so long, and there's good reasons why, and they're one of the most modified guns on the market. there's so many different options that you can do to them. So, and then also the little Tippmann, you may not be able to see it, it's up front, but it's a little AR-22. And these have been very reliable. We have had a lot of experience, and to me, Tippmann is one of the best. There are also your 22 conversion kits, like your CMMG, and those just replace the bolt, your standard AR-15. So, and there are a number of AR-15s. The Tippmann's one of them that I really personally is my favorite. But you can use that and train with that same manual of arms that you have with your regular full-size go-to rifle. Another big bonus. But again, they're handy, they're lightweight, they're compact, and you can get some. I know the Henry survival rifle, that's one of my favorites, the Marlin Papoose. We did a video on a lot of those 22 survival rifles a while back and went through a lot of the different type rifles that are out there. In fact, I'm going to do a dedicated video that's standard video on this same subject. But I just wanted to kind of bring this out because I know a lot of you guys, y'all like to watch the lives. You may miss the standard videos, and this is just a great subject because honestly, 22 is my favorite to take to the range. Now, I love all kind of different guns, and if you watch my Suits channel, I'm a big gun guy. But when it comes to 22, it's low report, it's lightweight, it's low recoil, it's just a lot of fun. And again, you go out there with a big brick of 22, and you've spent very little money compared to taking your standard centerfire rifles out there. And it's just a great day at the range. But we're going to expand on that in just a second. But again, with your Henry survival rifle, it actually packs into the stock. So it has this little package, it actually floats, and it has a 10-round magazine. So it makes a great option. You just pull out the action, put it on, screw it on, and you're ready to go. A lot of times, especially with camping or hiking, they just make really cool options. But again, there's so many different ones. And really, I'm probably getting ahead of myself because we do have a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, with that, with the low report, with all that, this makes a perfect gun. And again, guys, it's not necessarily just the rifle. It can also be a handgun. I think the handgun is a little bit limited as far as a hunting option because, it's smaller, a little bit more to set up. You can put a scope on a rifle. You can put a nice little red dot. And you can put optics. So, and then you can get more stable, a little bit longer barrel length, a little bit more velocity coming out of the barrel. But a 22 pistol also can fit in these roles. Maybe not just as capable as the rifle, but the one thing about a pistol is that you can conceal it. And if you're in a situation where, and of course, some of these rifles you can't conceal, you can put that in a small bag or whatever, and you can use that as an option. Have a suppressor with a threaded barrel, and you're really doing well. In fact, the 22 has been used as an assassin's weapon for a long time. And typically with assassins, they get it really close. And so it makes it one of those things. One of the things that a lot of people, and I'd heard this years ago, that before they went into some more of the more different kind of methods for dispatching animals, is that hogs a lot of times were dispatched with 22 short right at the top of their head, and they take those out. I don't know if you've watched the guys that do the alligators, the hunting of the alligators, the swamp people, and they use a 22 to kill alligators. They know where to hit, and again, that goes into shot placement, making sure that you hit the right vital area and knowing how to do it. Now we're going to go to some questions here in just a second when we finish up this. So I want to give Sarah Mack a little bit of a heads up. But one of the things about 22 is every time I take a new shooter, someone that's never shot before, I typically will take, and I always take a 22 long rifle option. And what I like to do is to get them with a 22, teach them a little bit of the basics, let them shoot a few rounds. There's no recoil to it. I mean, and you can get young kids. I started out all three of our kids with 22, very easy, builds up a little bit of their confidence. And then when you come out with the next caliber, you say, hey, now this is going to have more recoil, so you need to have a little more to it. And so then they can kind of step up to it. I think one of the mistakes a lot of people do, and some people are just doing it for fun, is they'll hand somebody a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and they've never shot before. And then, even seasoned shooters, I personally do not really care about shooting a lot of 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. And so, that way they can get into shooting. And a lot of times, in fact, it was funny, my mother, for years, number one, she didn't like guns when I was really young, until we had somebody trying to break into our house, and then she changed her mind. But my dad bought her a little Bearcat Ruger 22, which was not a good self-defense choice. But she was able to shoot that, and she's 5 foot tall, so she was able to shoot it and enjoyed it, and then moved up to the SIG P380 or the P38. And well, let's see, the SIG P. Now that's bad. I'm about to forget which SIG, but one of the little SIG single action 1911 styles. But she ended up getting that and really liked it in 380. But it took a progression to get her there. So again, with these new shooters, get them in a progression to build up to shooting what gives them confidence, and then explain to them, and then just bring them in. Because here's the thing, guys, we don't want to turn people off from shooting. And 22 long rifle is what a lot of people call the entry drug. You shoot some 22, then you're like, wow, this was fun. And then, well, let's have a little more power. And then they move up. So it makes it a really good, easy way to do it. And typically the rifles are fairly lightweight, or the handgun. So you can have smaller, younger people that are shooting for the first time, and it gives them a great experience. So, all right, if we've got some questions.
Chris Matthews asked, hey, Mr. Don and Sarah Mack, what's your preferred pistol grip? I'm trying to better my follow-up shots.
And that is with pistol, AR-15 pistol. Chris, expand on that for me. There's a lot of different options if you're talking about an AR-15, especially with the shorter. A lot of people like the more vertical grip because it gets it more natural than the natural grip. I'm a big fan of the BCM furniture. I think they do a great job. Of course, Magpul has been around and does a great job as well. But expand on that, and maybe Sarah Mack will pick that up. Now, and if it's a handgun, I'll tell you, in fact, I'm getting ready to release the review on the Taurus Model 605.
Your shooting grip, how you grip.
Oh, shoot it. Now, for me, and this is one thing I saw this on another video. Actually, it was Mike Glover from Fieldcraft Survival. But take the gun and put it in your hand and push it down, just because you want your grip to be as high up on the handgun, because you have that metal, the slide coming back. So you want to have the most leverage you can have on the grip. And so for me, I like to grip with my shooting finger, my shooting hand, but you don't want to have a death grip with your shooting hand. You want to have a good firm grip, because if you have a death grip and then you're pulling the trigger, you tend to kind of jerk a little bit. So you want to make sure that you have a good solid grip. Bring this hand and just fit it in behind those fingers. It naturally fits with the meat of your hand right there. And then I like to have it up as high as I can get it on the handgun. A lot of times people watch the videos, and it's according to how the filming is, but typically I have really good recoil control. And they'll say, how in the world do you do that? And I like to get it really low in my hand, but take your supporting hand and give it a good, solid, firm grip. And I see a lot of guys when they're shooting, they're like, they're letting it ride. I only do that if I'm shooting some really high calibers. I like to keep it down and in and keep it on target, to where when it's moving up, that sight picture is not getting too far off the grip or off the target. So I like to have it in there and let it just kind of ride up a little bit. I don't like to be loose. Some people say, oh, I just bring it in loose and you don't want to have too tight of a grip. I disagree with that. I think you need to have a good solid grip, but you don't want a death grip with your gripping hand. So I hope that helps. If not, I will talk about it at the gun show next time.
Boxer Papa asked, Don, can you do a video on setup and required supplies for a safe room? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good one because and whether it's a safe room in a longer term situation or even if a home invasion, a lot of people that do have places, we have a couple of rooms actually, and we have a place where if there's storms like tornadoes, things like that, we have a blackout box. We keep certain items in there. We get prepared ahead of time, especially with storms coming, because we want to have one place in our house. It's right under our stairwell, and we can get in there if there is a problem. And then we have another room in another location in our house that is more for, you can actually hide in there. Nobody would ever know you're in there. So, but yeah, that's a good idea.
Triangle Whip says, hi, Don. If you could only have one .22 pistol or rifle, would it be long rifle or magnums?
I like Magnum. It's a good, solid report. It's good ballistically. But here's the thing about 22 Magnum: the price has gotten up to close to 9mm prices. So you lose the effect of a lot of ammo. Second thing about 22 Magnum versus 22 long rifle is that when you go into a gun shop, you may or may not find 22 Magnum. 22 Magnum's popular, but not near as popular as your 22 long rifle. So you're going to be able to stock up quite a bit more with your 22s. And they're actually making some of these defense rounds for 22 that just give you a little more capability. Again, self-defense for 22 is the lowest on the totem pole, but it can be effective. I'll tell you a story. I have a friend of mine that works, he was an EMT, and he said he went to a scene where a wife was at home with a 22. Her husband, ex-husband or estranged husband, was coming over and he was going to kill her, told her. He said, I'm going to kill you. I'm coming. He showed up. He had a plate carrier on. He had a couple of knives. He had his AR, and he walks up to the door and he bangs on the door and opens it. And she's standing there with a 22 pistol, and she goes and shoots him right between the eyes, drops him dead right there. 22 is lethal. It's lethal. Big problem with 22 is that it takes maybe a little bit longer for you to incapacitate someone. So an option, but that's not answering your question. The thing about, I think 22 Magnum, I would rather have for a self-defense situation. But as far as a survival situation, 22 long rifle to me, hands down. I love, again, 22 Magnum. I have a number of them. But I think that 22 long rifle is going to trump it, as in having more rounds. Again, lower report. I like that for survival and easier to suppress. Okay, we'll come back to some questions in a minute. We need to get on to it. Okay, variety of models. Now, we've already touched on that some, but I'm going to go ahead and expand on it a little bit. Here we have a number of different guns. We have the Springfield Army little 22, and I love CZs as well. CZ makes a really nice line of bolt actions. And for that matter, Ruger. There's a number of different 22 bolt actions out there. Personally, while I like the accuracy and I like the stability and just sitting down at a bench with a 22 bolt action, the 22 the 22 semi-automatics are more versatile. You can get really extreme accuracy with a bolt action. Now, with a 1022 set up right, you can get some really good accuracy as well. But typically, you want like a bull barrel, and then you get the weight up to your standard lever action. A little 22 Ruger, a 1022, one of the most popular 22 rifle ever made. It's reliable. It's easy to work on. You can actually take the barrel off. I've done some complete rebuilds of 22s, and they're a lot of fun. I mean, they were a lot of fun to put together. It's funny, years and years ago when I had a 22 rifle, a little 1022, and I had a friend of mine that liked to build the heavy barrel 22 1022s. And I was kind of like, to myself, I was thinking, man, why would anybody want to do that? And it was funny. When I got one, started shooting it, I was like, oh man, this is fun. It's just just so accurate. But I really like the semi-automatic, and of course with the Ruger magazines, and you can get really higher capacity magazines for that. So it gives you a lot of options, and you can put a lot of rounds on range on someone. And so that is a great, or for hunting, and you can just shoot. But also, just like the Tippmann, you can get many AR-15 options. The Tippmann has a number of different sizes, but I really like their little pistol, and it's just tiny, and you can bring around has a little folding stock. You can bring it around. And then there are a lot of others. And of course, I have done reviews on those. In fact, I don't know if I have it annotated here, because a lot of times with the lives, they're so long, I might not be able to find it. But I did do a video on a lot of the different survival specific options. Now with 22, you don't have to have a survival specific option. You can have just a standard like this little bolt action, and use it just is fine. But if you want more capability, you can come up with something that's lighter weight. And that's one of the reasons why this carbon fiber 1022 is such an attractive firearm. Put a sling on it, put it on your shoulder, it's lightweight. You start getting heavier, especially with larger optics, it's going to weigh you down some. And one thing, I guess, well, I'll get into that in a second on number 9, but there's so many different types. And so you have to find what really works best for you and for your situation. So such a variety of models. And then you get into the handguns. And for me, I'm a big fan of the Ruger Mark II, or Mark IV now, the Mark IV pistols. And I've had those for years with the Mark II, but now with the Mark IV, it gives you a lot of possibilities. But the one cool thing is that you can get a 1911, like a SIG. Well, I don't think SIG makes them anymore, but the little SIG 22 1911s, or there's a lot of different ones out there that mimic a full-size handgun or rifle. And you can use that for training. And again, it's cheap to shoot. And then you have all the same controls. And then you can supplement that with shooting your standard firearm. But dry firing is great for a lot of training. But to me, 22 takes it up a step for your training. And then you go to your full handgun, and you want to make sure you do train with that quite a bit, because the recoil difference is going to be a lot. And so you want to make sure that you have cross training with both. Even with an AR-15, your standard 22 AR is fun, and it's just hardly none. There's just not any felt recoil that much. But with a standard AR-15, while it's not as much recoil as most firearms, pretty easy to shoot, it's still, you need that training with that. But as far as getting out and just doing training, I mean, it's a great way to go. So lots of options, lots of rifle options, lots of rifle pistol options, and a lot of standard options. If you carry the Glock, get you a Glock 22 or one of the 44s or whatever, and so you can use it to train with your standard pistol. So there's just so many varieties of models, so many different possibilities to fit into what you do. Now, ammo choices. Now, we kind of got into this a little bit a minute ago, but again, there is, find some really good ammunition. If you're having problems with reliability with your 22 semi-automatic specifically, try some CCI mini mags, try some high velocity Fiocchi. Those are really good. But find the ammo that works best. It's funny because there are some high velocities that actually cause malfunctions, even in a semi-automatic, whereas your standard velocity ammunition might work better. So if you buy a 22 and you start to have problems, I'm going to tell you a little story, and this is such a good example. Had a good friend of mine, and he went out and bought one of the Walther P22s. Great gun. I love them. And he took it out. He brought it down here. He said, "Hey, can I come down to your house and shoot it?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, he didn't have a lot of experience with guns. So when he got there, he was down at the range. And so he had bought some Federal, just bulk ammunition. Well, I knew that the P22 was a little finicky on what kind of ammo it ran. If you got the right ammo, it would run. Very reliable. But you had to find the right ammo. And so I didn't say anything, but I brought down a couple of mini mag boxes with me, just put them on the side. And so he loaded his magazine. He was like really nervous he kind of put him in, and he didn't have a lot of familiarity with the gun. And I watched him. I just let him do what he did. And he took it and he put the mag in, and he was really unsure. And then he pulled the slide back, but no confidence. And he got it out there and he shot it, and it malfunctioned. And he was like, and so I said, well, drop the mag. And he was like real nervous getting the mag out. And then he'd put it back in, he'd shoot it again. It would malfunction. Went through this all 10 rounds. And then finally I said, okay. I said, give me your magazine. So I loaded up the mini mags, put it in there, bam, bam, bam. So he shot. Well, when he finished with that magazine, because he had changed the magazine so many times and he'd racked the slide so many times, it was like he pulled the magazine out, he put it down, got a net fresh mag, put it in, racked the slide, and shot. It was a perfect training opportunity for him. And then when he finished, he went, wow. And he really, just because he was having those malfunctions. So sometimes malfunctions can actually help you to be a better shooter. It can help you to work the action more. It can help you to fiddle around. If you take a gun and it's just super accurate or super reliable and you get out there and just shoot it, you don't really understand if you do have a problem. The thing is you may not have mini mags. They're a little more expensive than some of your bulk ammunition. You may have some standard velocity. And so train with that. Let it see what it'll do. Or you may, in a survival situation, that may be all you have. And so you may actually have a single shot 22, but if you're functioning it and you're messing with it, it's going to make it faster. So again, ammo choices. One thing that I love are the little shot shells by CCI. This makes like a mini shotgun. Great for pest control. Great for, just birds or whatever that, and I'm going to get into all that with all the nuts, but you have some really cool options with your single shot. Really, and this becomes a single shot in a regular pistol. Now, for me, I like to have a little revolver, and I can use the mini mat or the shot shells in that little revolver, and it doesn't matter because it's going to function every time. But in a semi-automatic, you may have a little more problem with your little shot shells, and you have your subsonics. Subsonics are great, obviously, if you have a suppressor. And so it just quietens it down a little bit more. And they're standard velocity. Again, there are shorts, which shorts are real tiny, and they have a very low report. You can even get the CBs, which have even less report, but you have less capability with the round. And with 22 long rifle, you're already getting it down there. But in a standard bolt action rifle, you can shoot shorts in it, you can shoot longs, you can shoot the CBs in it, and so tons of options. Here's some Agula, and this is just some subsonic. And the one thing about subsonic sometimes, or for your target ammunition, is that it can malfunction. So you want to make sure, again, that you know your rifle, you know the ammunition that it'll shoot. You don't want to get your rifle and run out and buy 5,000 rounds of whatever ammunition, get it home, and you've got problems with your gun. So buy a couple of different types, try it out. If it works great, then you're set. Then you go out and you stock up on ammunition. And one thing I do want to say, and we talked about with price, but you can pick up a lot of 22 ammunition for a reasonable price. And so I highly recommend you doing that and then taking it and putting it in an ammo tin, and typically our military ammo tin specifically, but even the MTM cans, they have the seal around it and they'll seal it up. But that's the biggest thing, because honestly, they'll last for a long, long time. I mean, people are still shooting World War I ammunition through guns all the time, as long as it's properly stored. And so make sure that you properly store your 22. Don't just leave it out, sitting out, and if it's something that you're wanting to put back. So, and two, you can stock up a lot of ammunition in one of those tins. If you want to even take it out of the box, you can just reach in and get it. And they're so easy to shoot. I love it so much. I just love 22. Reliable. Now, again, reliability lends itself to what ammunition choices you're making. So, but with the right ammunition, they can be very reliable. The problem with 22 though is centerfire is more reliable than your 22 rimfire. And one of the reasons why 22 or the 25 ACP was even developed by John Moses Browning was it just made a more reliable option because of that center fire. The primer's in the middle and it hits it straight on, and they're just more reliable. With the rim on the outside of the 22, they can have a few issues like primer strikes, things like that. But typically with good quality ammunition, and that's another thing you want to be careful of, spend a little bit of extra money to buy better 22. Let's face it, it's already cheaper than anything else that you're going to buy. Even the more premium stuff like these mini mags, or sometimes like the Stingers, they're even more. And CCI makes a whole line of all kind of different ammunition. Even the Stingers can cause malfunctions if you're not careful because it's so much, just the pressures are a little bit higher. So test your ammunition, make sure that you store it properly, and you should be good to go according to whatever you have. Now, self-defense, number 9. Self-defense. Again, we talked a little bit about it already, but it is not the preferred choice for self-defense. In fact, it is last resort. You really don't want to rely on 22. But let's talk about that. 22 is capable. 22 will, it is lethal. In fact, Robbie had a case one time that happened locally. He was one of the expert witnesses. And a guy had a lot of problems around his property with this guy who was on meth or whatever. And the guy was causing a lot of problems, always messing around, doing things, tearing things up. And the guy that owned the property came up one day and confronted the kid. He was a young man, but confronted him. And the guy just said, "I'm going to kill you," and started running toward him. Well, all he had was his Walther P22. And he pulled it out and he put all 10 shots into the guy's face. And the guy dropped and died. Well, it was very lethal. The one thing about it in court, the big problem is could you do that? Could you actually be that fast and be able to put all those 10 rounds into the guy? And unfortunately, and this is not necessarily part of the subject, but it's something to consider, is the guy's family was standing on the other side of the road because they lived there in a mobile home, and they watched it, and they called the police and said the guy murdered their son. And so the guy had to go through a major court battle, ended up losing all his property, won the case in the long run, spent 2 years in jail. Self-defense is something, guys, that you really need to take seriously, and it needs to be the last resort again. So, but again, 22 is capable. It can definitely handle things, but again, it's the last resort. I do have another friend of mine who his wife will not carry anything more than a 22. She does not like to shoot. She doesn't want to shoot. And so she will only shoot 22, and she will only carry. Her concealed carry firearm is a 22. So need to know the limitations, and you need to be aware of it in case you ever have to use it. And there may be someone, you may have someone, you may be someone that are like, 22 is all I'm going to use. And again, it can be lethal. It's better than a sharp stick, but in a self-defense situation, really having another caliber is going to give you some more advantages and take away a little bit of the chance of you yourself being killed. So 22, last defense. Okay, now number 10. And this is a big one, especially for preppers, is stocking up on a lot of 22 gives you a lot of bartering potential. There's a lot of 22s out there. A lot of grandpa's 22s that were handed down. They may not have even bought a 22, but they got their grandpa's. One of my sons, Grant, he has my dad's 22 rifle. And actually, it was a gun that was handed down to him from my grandfather. So 22 long rifles, there's a bunch out there. And so that lends itself to bartering because people don't necessarily, they may have a couple of boxes laying around and it gives them something to be able to barter with. So a very big bartering tool. And I like to stock it up as much as I can. And of course we use it. We use a lot. we go through a lot of 22. And so for us, we need to really be stocking up on it. I will say this right now. There is something that's taken effect called the Trump slump. It happened back the first time he was elected, is that people felt like the Second Amendment was under less of a threat. And honestly, right now, it is under less of a threat. And so people, not necessarily the gun guys or the survival minded people, but just your general public's kind of like, and they're sending all these illegals and they're cleaning up these cartels and Trump's making deals and everything's great and I don't have to worry about it. But for us, for gun people, for prepping people that really look for, to bulk up what they have, this is the best time to buy because right now prices on ammunition across the board have really come down. In fact, we've come across some of the craziest deals, and that's through our website, so check that out. But it's suitsgear.com. But having 22 right now and stocking it up is the best time to do it. So honestly, guys, over the next 4 years, hopefully we're not going to have a lot of threats to our Second Amendment. But on the other hand, the next 4 we could. So go ahead and make sure that right now, because we've had this happen over and over, where something happened and then all the stores are empty of ammunition, and then you're paying these exorbitant prices. And instead, go ahead and have some put back and make sure you have a good stockpile. All right, let's go to some questions.
Paul Frank says, question, I have concentrated my firearms, pistols, and rifles to either 22 long rifle or 9mm. Obviously, there are other longer range firearms. Am I making a mistake?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. You need a rifle. When we first started our first prepper group years ago, a lot of people had shotguns. They had a handgun. Some of them had a hunting rifle, maybe. And then we had some guys that were all between, they had AR-15s, they had all that stuff. But there was a number of people that were new to prepping that were coming in that didn't have a long range option. I want you to consider this. Let's say that you're at a survival, you're at your bug out location, you're at home and you're bunkering in. And some guy with a rifle is 300 yards away. You're not going to be able to hit him. Now, can a 22 reach that? Yes. And with the right capabilities and skills, you can possibly hit somebody like that. But really, and with a pistol, it's 300 yards. It's going to be near impossible, but not impossible. That's the reason why. And look, if you don't want to run out and buy an AR-15, which honestly, AR-15s right now, Pelham State Armory, they're selling them for $400, $350. They're as inexpensive as even or less expensive than some hunting rifles. But having a good longer range option is just something good to have. It can be a standard hunting rifle. It can be a 270, a 308, it could be whatever, or 223 for that matter. But it gives you the ability to keep somebody from having a huge advantage because they have distance. They can pick people off at 300 yards. We shoot man-sized steel targets at 300 yards with no optics. We can do that. So you put a good optic on something, you could suppress fire to keep somebody down, and they can control everything. So definitely get yourself at least something that can reach out to 300 yards. Once you get past that, most people's skill is not up to that. 300 yards is very doable. It's just a lot of people don't have the place to actually learn to shoot that far. So, but even at 100 yards, you're going to be, with a 22, you can kind of keep them kind of back. But if you're having center fire rounds coming at you, you're going to be really hard pressed. So with that being said, and that can be even in an urban situation because, down the street, we can get some distance. So just look for at least something that is a longer range capability. I think there's a definite place for that.
I'm all right says, question, I keep food and water in my get home bag in my car. The car is outside year long. How often should I change out the food and water? Is there any food that lets me rotate out less frequently?
That would be lifeboat food. Lifeboat bars, perfect, perfect for storing away. They have a 5-year shelf life. They have a Mylar vacuum sealed pack to it. 2,000 up to 3,600 calories in a bar. You can really do well with that. That's what we use. I really like that option. And it's stable. One thing about the food and water in your vehicle, if you have it in your pack, it has some insulation. So while your car is getting hot, especially in the summertime, uh, take your hand and just reach down in your pack to see if there is a major difference with the temperature. Now, you don't want your food and your water to get too hot and get warm, but you still can drink it. What I would recommend is about once every quarter going through. Now, you need to do it anyway with the season changes. You need to have maybe a little something bumped up for your cold weather, even more than you need to change it for your summer. Even year round, I keep a fleece wrapped up in my get home bag, is what I like to. I keep it in my car. And I like to have an option because even in the middle of summer, you get caught in a rainstorm. My brother, he's a big fly fisherman. He goes all over the place. And he said that it was in July one year and he was down on this creek or river and it came a huge storm and the temperature dropped. He was up probably a little bit of elevation, but he said he was freezing. And he got up to his car, had a fleece in there, and he put it on. And he was able to keep himself warm. So you want to have your season change anyway, but you definitely want to check your food and water. I would say no more than every quarter. You may want to check it a little bit more often, but take your bag, reach down in it, especially on a hot day, see if there's a temperature change because there should be some insulation with what you have in the bag.
J9000 says, "Hey Such, I'm a concealed carry holder, but my in-laws believe no one needs a firearm except for hunting. Yet they tell me if anything goes down, they'll just come to my house. How would you respond?"
People, listen, there are some people you will not be able to talk into, reason with, whatever. One thing I would recommend with your in-laws is to take them to the range. We have done this so many times. There are people that were kind of marginal on firearms. They were kind of, I don't know, but they knew I like to shoot a lot. So they're like, maybe I can go shoot. Or I'll say, hey, come, let's go shoot some. And they're like, okay, it's just an event for them to do. They go down to the range. In fact, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law was coming down to the range, wanted to take her, and she was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But she came anyway. She didn't say anything to me about it, but she went down there. I gave her a 22. She shot it. By the time the range day was over, she was like, this was fun. We need to do this more often. And she started carrying a gun. So getting people out, to me, that is the best way to get non-shooters or people that are against guns, taking them to the range, letting them see how they function. It's not that fear of the firearm, because that's what usually does it. People are afraid of them. And they're like, well, and let them shoot some. And you'll be amazed at how they'll warm up to the idea of having a firearm in their home or whatever. It's according to where you live. I mean, here in South Carolina, firearm shooting is just normal. I mean, you hear people out on their properties all the time just shooting. And so, there's a lot. But if you're in Connecticut or, another state that has more liberal policies, sometimes the mindset there. But I would just take them to the range sometime. Take 22. Just take a 22 and let them shoot it. And you'll see that they will start to warm up to the idea. It's funny. When YouTube started and people started shooting, a lot of people that were anti-gun started watching YouTube. They'd come across a gun video and for some reason, they decided to watch it. I was at NRA one year and I had, honestly, because I spoke to a lot of people. We had big meet and greets. I had 30 different people come to me and say, you know what? I got on YouTube. I saw some shooting. I thought, that's kind of cool, interesting. And people, just normal people shooting. And they got interested. They bought a gun. They got their concealed carry permit. They ended up being they joined the NRA and ended up coming to the event. There's a progression there that there's a lot to be said. So see if you can get your in-laws, take 22. I would take a 22 because it'd be so easy, and let them shoot and just see how they react. What I wouldn't do is try to talk them into having a gun in their home, having this. You're not going to be able to do it. But if you can kind of take them out and get them kind of warmed up to it, you might find that they're like, hey, you know what? I think I need one.
The Virginia Bushcrafter says, hello, sir. Good to see you. Have you tried the Federal Punch 29 grain?
Yes, I have some. I've been wanting to do some testing in ballistic gelatin. I have a lady friend of mine that's actually one of my Patreon members, and she's like a little school teacher. She's so funny, but she trains ladies. She loves to train, and so she has classes that she puts on for self defense. And it was one of the things that she had gotten, and she was talking about it. So I had bought some, and I really want to do some extensive testing. We have some clear ballistic gel that we want to do some testing with 22 calibers, and one is just the little shot shells and some of the other rounds to see how they'll function. And the punch is definitely one that is supposed to give you a little more advantage. So again, 22 is lethal, and if there's something that they have developed that'll give you an edge, I think that's a great option, especially if you're thinking about it for self-defense. One of the things that I've done is sometimes when I'm outside with the dog or whatever, and it's at night, and I'm just like in something light, I might throw in a little 22 revolver into my pocket, a little Smith & Wesson J-frame 22, because they have the air weights and they're so freaking lightweight. I slip it in there and I can walk around the yard. I'm not really worried about attacks or anything. I'm mainly worried about maybe other animals. So I think that 22, those punch, we're going to do some more testing on it. Well, man, it's 1 o'clock. I hope, guys, that giving you a lot of food for thought. A lot of you have already probably thought about this. If you have a 22, you like it. But there are a lot of great options and reasons to have a 22. We didn't hit them all. We hit a lot of them. But again, it's super inexpensive. You can stock up on it. Again, you can use for bartering. There's a lot of different options out there. Many of you probably have a 22. Take that and stock up your ammo. Get out and practice with it. Take others training with it, and before long, and hunting with it. I mean, so many different reasons to have it, and so many different options. I mean, honestly, the rimfire world is huge. If you want to step it up to 22 Magnum and you have the capability, that also makes a great option. It does take away a little bit of the quiet part. Takes away a little bit of the ammo being inexpensive part, again, because it's run up, but it still gives you a lot of choices. So hope it helped you guys. Again, check out suitsgear.com, and we've got a lot going on over there. So check it out and get on our newsletter. We are giving away the Academy Sport bug out bag that we put together, and so you can register for that. That'll be for this whole month of March. And also we appreciate Exotac for sponsoring today's video. You get 20% off using Suits20 on Exotac. There's a link down below in the description, take you straight to the page. And it also helps the Suits channel out so we can buy more 22 ammunition. And also a big thanks to Sarah Mack for taking care of all the questions and helping me get set up. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.